This is your Formless Guide. We're going to look today on the topic of a spiritual awakening. What is spiritual awakening? How does it affect us? Where does it come from? And where do we go from there? Just like most of what we do, this has been a natural occurrence, sometimes miraculous occurrence for individuals since the beginning of time, since history has been recorded. How do we bring this awakening to ourselves? What makes it an awakening? It's when you finally see or have the insight to shed light upon what is and what is not. It's when you first begin to become aware. When awareness comes in the form of questions or expressions or events in your life. When you approach them, when you see them in that moment, you don't perceive them in the same way. You think of them through a much more what feels like an intense or deep process, creating this level of awareness that we call a spiritual awakening. This comes true when an individual experiences a significant event or moment of realization for themselves, as well as how they would like to be in the world, how they would like to be within themselves and externally, with groups, with friends, with relationships, in everything they approach. Now it has to deal with the right mindset, the right way we approach things, not meaning necessarily to focus on the way of right, but the way we interpret and now process things are not meant to simply work as a means to just be right. Having the right mindset means having the mindset that is not only beneficial to the external factor, but is beneficial to yourself. It's helpful and assisting towards your growth, your well-being growth, your spiritual being growth, because you're now becoming aware as to why things are the way they are. You are now given that decision to what you would like to do with that information provided, blossoming to clarity for yourself and for others who may not have that sense of clarity as yet. Now, where do we get the ideology or theory of a right mindset? This stems from Buddha's Eightfold Path, where there is the right mindset, the right intention, the right speech, the right action, the right livelihood, the right effort, the right mindfulness, the right concentration. Now remember, as I defined, what we establish as the right of its correlating function, be it action, career, thought, feeling, and how it is processed. What we're trying to cultivate here as the right image is having the clarity to see beyond the illusions of what is presented in every aspect of when you are approached in these different realms of your psyche. Because these right intentions, right understanding, the right actions, all of these are based upon different levels in your system, different levels in your psyche, through which you can work on at a pace motion, or you could go fast-paced based upon the individual's capability. Remember, do not overextend yourself. This spiritual awakening is a process. It starts off with grace and realization because of truth. And with that truth being received, it is received in a joyous manner. Sometimes when people experience spiritual awakenings, it may be unconsciously, it may be consciously. For some that experience spiritual awakening unconsciously, they may feel forced into this reality. They may feel a detachment to society. They will feel a detachment to themselves because they are now autonomously in a state of thinking that wasn't conscious to them, that wasn't learned for them. It was something that just spring blossom. And sometimes these things occur depending on the importance or significance of an event or situation in your life. It can trigger a spiritual awakening. However, what we would like to cultivate is being able to consciously bring this experience to you. And the most stable way you can begin approaching the spiritual awakening is meditation. Meditation brings you to a state of clarity, calmness, and openness to receive, to assess, and to contemplate with compassion, keyword with compassion, as the spiritual awakening blossoms, as you become more aware to life's truths, to your truths. It is important to cultivate spiritual awakening in yourself in a regulated environment. Some may not have to do meditation. Spiritual awakening happens in many forms. Some people may be in religions where they practice specific traditions or rituals that help people access their spiritual awakening. Remember, this is already a process that's been practiced over a long period of time, as well as meditation. So whichever path you choose to follow, you can do so. However, this is focused upon the topic of spiritual awakening. And what do we do with this? When it is experienced or achieved by an individual, it then becomes their responsibility to either use it or to dislike it because of its truth. Sometimes truth can be hard to accept within our lives. Sometimes truth can be hard to be heard, to be accepted. And this can hinder us. It can actually cause a spiritual awakening to become what feels like a spiritual fall, because you've just become aware and now you were thrown into yet another cave of uncertainty through which you felt like you were already struggling in. It may feel like overwhelming. It may feel like a pileup. This is why the most important factor when it comes to achieving or having a spiritual awakening is compassion. Compassion nurtures and adds the sweetness of emotion to the realizations that you have on a daily basis. Each time truth is presented to you, it is not rewarded by your own deflection. It is not awarded by avoidance. It is not awarded by your decision to make an illusion to hinder this truth. What do we do in this truth? We accept it. That's the first step after having an insightful realization. You accept it. In the chakra series, this would be the sixth chakra of realization, bringing insight and intuition. However, when the sixth chakra opens, it is important to also have the fourth chakra working with it, your heart chakra. Because on a daily basis, you will encounter challenges where you will see illusions of different forms. Sometimes they may be easier than others to see them. Sometimes you may feel emotional turmoil from seeing them. What you need to do each time these things occur, each time these emotions occur, this is something that Buddha taught us. Thoughts come, they arise, and then they pass away. Let them be just like that. This can also be taken from Zen Buddhism, where we practice flowing, being able to be happy with what is, and now flowing with it. Not letting it be a hindrance or cause opposition to your already fast-flowing current. It's there to bring regulation without the distortion that you felt before. This is how vital compassion is when we experience a spiritual awakening. Cultivating compassion is as important as cultivating this insight, because they must have a balance. Remember, this is the spiritual awakening. So when you begin a journey, as you begin a journey with this new realization of having a goal for that journey, you need to have a slow, steady plan that will get you to that journey. And in that plan, you have to practice self-compassion, as well as compassion to others that may need it. Now, when it comes to the individual who is spiritually awakened, though we have a heightened state of awareness and a higher state of now being conscious from being unconscious, it is going to make you feel much more than the average person would. It is going to make you see much more than the average person would. With this comes the need for self-compassion practices, through which we cultivate in our guided meditation series, where you can use our episode on the heart chakra. What does it mean to foster an empowered heart chakra? How does it benefit us? And how do we bring this to a reality? And after that, you can explore the sixth chakra, bringing insight and understanding why compassion and this insight has to be one in one, has to have a polarity with each other for them to bring growth. Thus, you may find the yin and yang sign of Zen Buddhism. This is why this exists. Because with this light comes darkness. With this darkness also comes light. And as we practice, and you begin to reach these higher states of being conscious, not consciousness as yet, being conscious, because a spiritual awakening is the awakening of your heightened awareness. And that awareness comes from being conscious. When fear is no longer a factor in how much you're willing to perceive in life. You may hear this a lot. Reality is a configuration of your manifestation. It is a consequence of how well you can visualize and manifest. So, the spiritual awakening brings higher senses and higher meaning. And as I was saying, you will find different forms of spiritual awakening across the world. every religion, every occult, every community that has achieved this heightened state of awareness, this now being conscious, you will see them throughout the world. Whichever ritual or tradition or sect fits in with where you would like to spring this awakening to is entirely yours. However, the experience of a spiritual awakening, being conscious, is something that is awarded to all. I would like that for you, and I'm sure you would like that for yourself. Because we often desire change in our life, whether we'd like to accept it or not. Change is not only something we fear, it is something that we subconsciously want. On a daily basis, you crave change. Every second of the day, you will crave change. Sometimes you may feel that change is far to reach, that change is beyond you. But change is already happening. It happened from the beginning of this podcast. And right now, you're already changed yet again because of this now informative procedure that we've brought you through into understanding this spiritual awakening. What was a spiritual awakening? And what is going to be a spiritual awakening for those that choose to have this state of heightened awareness, who chooses to be first conscious. You can strongly connect this conscious spiritual state to our first chakra, Muladhara, as it deals with facing the fears within yourself and what you believe or have perceived or felt as external fears. And then we bring realization to these fears before then accepting these fears. Remember, I began this episode of spiritual awakening being the flow of insight with the sweetness of compassion. The sixth chakra of Agna working with the fourth chakra of Anahata. And for further dissolution, practicing compassion as you begin to reveal the illusions and bring forth truth in your life. Handling more wisdom, becoming more intuitive, and not becoming detached due to this intuition and insight, but become more compassionate of where it springs from, where it comes from, which comes from us, which comes from we, which comes from you. Remember, love is you. Love exists because of you. So remember, every piece of insight that comes to you from this spiritual awakening, enforce it, reinforce it with compassion and love being its main factor. Insight and intuition brings wisdom, but compassion fuels motivation for a greater destination in your spiritual journey. This was just your spiritual awakening, and it is an amazing event to be appreciative of and to now practice compassion as it is experienced on a daily basis. This is your Formless Guide, signing off.